Hi, everybody. I'm sports psychologist Dr. Andrew Jacobs. I'm located in Kansas City. I'm the host of the Sports Psychology Hour, Dr. Andrew Jacobs Sports Psychology Hour on the radio every Sunday morning from 7 to 8 a.m. Central Time on Sports Radio 810 WHB. You can hear it at 810WHB.com. And I've been doing the show for 33 years, the last 23 years at Sports Radio 810 WHB. And now we've launched the Sports Psychology Hour as a podcast, now via live stream. So go to my website, which is winnersunlimited.com. Click on the podcast tab. You can hear close to 10 years of episodes of our show. And we're now doing a whole new series of conversations focusing on coaches and athletes. And today we're lucky to have Georgia Miller with us. She's down in Miami, Florida. Lucky her. And thanks for joining the Sports Psychology Hour, Georgia. She's a mental performance coach, and I'm really looking forward to talking with her. So thanks for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Doctor.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about your work, what you do, how you got into it. You're a former college volleyball player, so you obviously understand a little bit about coaches and pressures and stressors and all those types of things. I'm guessing you share that with the people you work with from an experiential perspective as well.
Yeah, definitely. So I played volleyball in college, and I always thought I would coach at the college level, but specifically coach volleyball. That was my dream growing up. And then I just fell in love with the mental aspect of it. And I was like, I want to help more than just volleyball players. I want to help all athletes. So that's just kind of where my love for it grew. And then I went to grad school for it. But I did coach. I was a graduate assistant coach, and I coached at the club level. So I have experience coaching. So I think that helps me in my work with athletes now because I understand the coach role, the coach perspective, but also this mental performance side of it. So that definitely helps me in my work.
So you said you fell in love with the mental part of it. Tell me about how that came about, because when you do that, I'll share a little bit about how I get into this myself.
Yeah, I feel like it's a pretty cliche story. I took a psych class and my teacher mentioned sports psychology, and I was like, what is that? I need to know more. And from there, I was hooked, and I begged one of my college professors to let me in as a freshman. He had this sports psych class only open for seniors. I begged him to let me in. And then it just took off from there. I was like, this is exactly what I was born to do, made for it. It was perfect. So that's kind of how it started.
That's like exactly what happened with me. So in the fall of 1977, my second year in grad school, there was a class called sports psychology. I went to the California School of Professional Psychology in San Diego, and there were 8 people in the class, taught by Dr. Robert Nidafer. He wrote his textbook was called The Inner Athlete,
Mm-hmm.
and took the book down to the beach. That's the great thing about San Diego. I was a couple miles from the beach in class, so I'm going down to the beach, read the book cover to cover, and called Dr. Nidafer up that night, and I said, "This is what I want to do." And we set up the first training program in the country at San Diego State. My last year out there, where I worked with the tennis team and gymnastics team, and then it's like, why didn't I know this stuff when I played?
Oh yeah.
Because it would have really helped me, and I'm assuming that sort of clicked with you as well.
Yeah. I tell my athletes all the time, like, listen, if I knew what I know now, I would have been so much better off as an athlete.
Yeah, I probably would have won a few more matches than I lost, because I always choked from the pressure because I tried too hard,
Yeah.
and it's interesting. Throughout my 44 years of work, I've been fortunate enough to work with every level, from the Olympics and professionals and college down to high school and youth sports. The oldest, in fact, you mentioned you work with golfers and baseball players. You're like, the oldest client I've ever had in my office, Georgia, was an 81-year-old female golfer. And when I asked her, why are you coming in? She said, quite frankly, Dr. Jacobs, my putting sucks. And it did. And we worked on it. She worked on visualization, and she started to get pretty good. So, it's went that really, and that was early in my career too. It really impacted me that here's somebody who's 81 who still wants to get better.
Yeah. Never too old.
So tell us a little bit about your work. Tell us about some of the people you work with, obviously from a confidential perspective, but what are some of the people that come in and talk to you? Like, what are their stressors? What brings them in to see you?
Yeah. Typically, what we're seeing is our athletes that come into peak performance sports, they're practicing a whole lot better than they're playing in games. That's just a big sign for us that it's mental, lack of confidence, fear of failure is a big one, social approval nowadays, the social media aspects, perfectionism. Typically, with the younger athletes, I'm working a lot on composure, letting go of mistakes, kind of rationalizing those for them. Focus is a big one, managing expectations. I mean, I could keep going.
Well, you're like talking my language here because that's
Yeah.
exactly what I deal with all the time. What so younger kids today? Let me get your perspective on that. Younger kid, you said you've had a 9-year-old. You said that's the youngest.
9 was the youngest I've worked with. Yep.
Okay, so what brought him that person in at 9 years of age? What was their issue?
hmm Um, baseball specifically. Yeah, baseball, losing all composure, blowing up on the mound, crying, throwing helmets. Just could not get over mistakes. And that's typically at that age, 9 through 12. That's typically why parents are calling in for them, is just because of their emotional control. They can't really control their emotions.
So what? So when someone like that comes in to see you, tell us how you work through it with them. Like, tell us about the first session, what you do, and then how do you try to get them to understand? Because kids that age, at really younger than 11 or 12, I spend most of the time with the parents with them because the parents end up helping them work through these topics. Let me get your perspective on it.
Yeah, I love to keep the parents involved, especially at that age, because parents know them best, and they're the last ones that they see when they leave the car to go to their game. They're the first ones they see when they come off the field. So what their parents are saying to them, those pre-game car rides, the post-game car rides, that's really important. So I'm working with parents on those conversations. And with the athlete, I'm honestly not saying anything that's hugely different from what their parents are saying, but when it's coming from someone else, it tends to resonate with them a little bit more. So really talking about body language, that's a big one. I really emphasize the poker face for the little ones. They tend to really resonate with that. We talk about rationalizing their mistakes, kind of going through those expectations, because typically they're expecting themselves to not make any mistakes. And well, that's not really rational. It's sports, you're going to make mistakes. So we try to normalize that failure and basically build them a learning process. And how can you adapt from this? How can you learn from this? How can you grow from this? And working on their focus to get them moving on to the next play versus getting so caught up on that mistake they just made.
One of the things that I seem to be hearing a lot from younger athletes, younger than 17 or 18, all the way down to 9, 10, and 11, is this whole perfection thing. I've got to be perfect. I've got to make sure I do it right every time. I can't screw up. I can't make a mistake. And so I'll ask them, "Are you a perfectionist?" "Oh yeah." And I had a golfer in today who's a sophomore. Actually, he just entered his junior year. His GPA is 4.7. Okay. And he's never happy with any of his scores. If he shoots a 68, it should have been a 67. If he shoots a 71, it should have been a 70. And we've been working on this for a while. He's finally starting to understand that, there's no such thing as a perfect round of golf. You can have a great round of golf, feel good about it, but there's always going to be a flaw. I always like to use the analogy. Tiger Woods years ago was playing in Orlando, where you were living for quite a while, and preparing for the Masters with Mark O'Meara. This is back 15, 20 years ago. And in a practice round, he shot a score of 59. And the media got a hold of it, and caught up with him after he practiced. The practice round was on a Tuesday. He ended up winning the Masters that week. But after that practice round, they said, "Gosh, 59, you must be on top of your game." "Oh, no, it should have been a 57. There were 2 putts I left short." Well, if he shot a 57, he probably would have said it should have been a 56. So when you've got someone younger, especially, coming in with this whole perfection ideal, how do you get them to work through it and get them to understand that?
Yeah. I really like to start off with, okay, well, what are the good things about being a perfectionist? There's obviously a lot of good qualities about it. You work really hard, care, your quality of work is probably better, but there's a lot of frustration that can come with it. You probably focus on other people's opinions, hard time letting go, very high strict expectations. So I really like to talk about, okay, what are the good things about it, strengths, and then what are some of the bad things about it, and how can we find that balance between? And then I really like to pull out those perfectionist beliefs that they have. Like, I was working with a gymnast this week, yesterday, and we're working on with her on a mental block on beam. She has a really hard time doing back tucks on her beam. And this fear, this little block that she has, we're like, okay, well, what is the limiting belief here? And it was, well, I feel like I shouldn't be scared on the beam. And so when every time she steps on that beam, when she's scared, she won't go because it's this uncomfy feeling. And so we've been talking about, listen, you don't have to be 100% comfortable in order to execute your skills. Like Simone Biles says, I'm terrified every time I do my vault, but you still fully commit to it. You can still perform with fear.
So with that whole issue of overcoming fear, the other side of that's confidence, or a big piece of that obviously fits in the confidence. So how do you get them when someone comes in and they're afraid to do a move or afraid of failing or afraid of screwing up? How do you get them to try to work with their self-confidence with that? Because to me, that's a big foundation of that whole issue.
Mm-hmm. There's several different routes that you can go. With this particular gymnast, we said, you know what, you're saving all the hard things for last. And what that's doing in your mind is it's like building and building. It's like when you're about to jump into a body of cold water and you're just standing there and it's just worse and worse and worse. You're like, okay, I really don't want to do this now. And by the time you get to it, it's this big scary thing. And so we said, okay, tomorrow you're going to go in and you're going to do your back tucks first thing. And you're going to just focus on your execution. You're going to focus on the landing of it. And then because she can do it, she's been doing it on low beam. So, and she's done it before. So she knows she can do it. And that's another piece of it, right? Is reminding yourself, I've done this before. I know I can do it. So where your focus is at. And so she's going to knock it out first thing. And that way it builds confidence. But if she's waiting around for confidence or to feel comfortable with it, she could be standing there for hours and hours.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that's just one direction that you could possibly go.
So with a gymnast like that, how involved do you get with their parents or even with the coaches to try to help them work through that?
Yeah, I'm actually really involved with her coaches, especially when they have mental blocks, because a lot of it is kind of based around like the structure of practice. Do you need to bring it back to the basics on some skills? Because if she has a mental block and she's not sending it, well then, okay, a lot of it is kind of wrapped around the structure of practice. And if she needs to come back to doing like literal somersaults or to take some pressure off. So I've been in communication with her coaches, and her coaches have been kind of talking to me about her progress. And then I've been giving them tips, and parents are kind of giving me their perspective too. So it's a very holistic group effort with this particular athlete.
Well, I think that's great that you're doing it that way, because throughout my career, of course, when I first started over 40 years ago, I had a local gym that got me involved, and the head coach was very interested, but there were a couple of assistant coaches, didn't want to deal with, I don't need a shrink in here telling us. So breaking that ice has been an issue I've had to deal with throughout my career. Mm-hmm. And it's gotten a lot better now because, especially now with the Olympics this past summer, all the talk about mental health, visualization, mental preparation, the gymnast who did the pommel horse, the male gymnast, Steven Nadarazic, I think say his last name, sitting there visualizing, and then of course the announcer goes, "What's he doing?" And someone said he's just sitting there. Well, he was going through in his mind. Then when he got onto the horse, he said, "It took us it was funny. He took his glasses off and he did sort of turn from Clark Kent to Superman." And then when he did his event, he was just so relaxed, and he said, "I don't need to see, I just need to feel." And I think that said a lot right there about not thinking, right? Because I'm sure with a lot of these young kids, they're worrying about failing or falling off the beam or running down to do the horse and run through it, whatever it might be. Do you get a lot of that with some of these young people?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think a lot of times feelings can be so overrated in your sport. You don't necessarily need to feel good to play good. That definitely came from Ken Ravizza. So we talk about that as taking the emotions out of it. And sometimes you have to lead with action, because that's what's going to build that confidence, especially at the start. You can't wait around for confidence to happen. You need to go create it and really commit to those opportunities.
Do you encourage your clients or athletes to do a lot of journaling?
Depending on the athlete, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I found that to be very helpful, especially for teenagers in college and professional Olympic level. I just talked to one of the Olympic cyclists. I was the team psychologist for the U.S. cycling from 1982 to 88. And in 84, we won 9 medals in the Olympics, had won any in 72 years. And I'm reconnecting with a lot of these guys now, and I'm on Facebook. And last week, one of the cyclists, Pat McDonough, who won a silver medal in the team pursuit event, we talked for an hour and a half. I hadn't talked to him in 40 years. And it was such a great interview. He's going to come on the show here in a couple of weeks. And we were talking about visualization. And he said, Andy, I still have the audio tape you made me 40 years ago about visualizing and relaxing. I can't play it anymore because I don't have a tape player and I think it'll break, but I've memorized it so much and it just helped me get through so many things. And I found that visual relaxation and visualization is an imperative component of helping these people out. Let me get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of pre-game routines, and typically with my athletes, that's where we're talking about the most is, okay, how can we incorporate this at the beginning of your day to get you nice and confident going into it? You're kind of already visualizing those good plays that you want to happen. You're already seeing it. It's already making you feel good going into your game or competition. And then with a lot of my golfers, actually, we've been making them audios for in between rounds and getting them to, okay, end of the first day, I'm resetting. And obviously we make it very personable and specific to them, but it's just a good little reset in between day 1, day 2, and even day 3, because those 3-day tournaments can be really long for them. So we've been making reset ones in between the tournaments.
So speaking of golf, let's talk about that for a little bit, because I've played my whole life and I work with dozens and dozens of golfers, golf teams. One of the things I always emphasize is your score is an irrelevant number until the puck goes in the hole on 18. And I found that because so many of these teenagers that I see coming in with me, they're so consumed with their score and they get so caught up with it, especially if they fall a couple strokes behind after 2 or 3 holes, then the pressure and the stress comes on. So what I get them to do is we focus on, I call it TNS, the next shot, or with place kickers, it's TNK, the next kick, or TNP, the next pitch in baseball or softball. But just focus on what's in front of you. I always use the analogy, when you're driving your car down the road, where are you looking? Well, ahead, right? Because if you turn around, crash. So it's like the shot you just hit is irrelevant. So what I always say is, if you hit a good shot, put your club in the bag, go to the next shot. But if you missed hit it, take a practice swing, visualize hitting it properly, then put your club in the bag and go on and try to move on. Let me get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I always say golf is one of those really cool symbolic sports where you are literally walking through the course. You're walking towards your ball. You have to take your mind with you. And with my golfers a lot, we work on, I say, why to what now. So if you maybe hit a hook and you're asking yourself, why did that happen? What's going on? Now that's leading you to overthink. You're going to want to fix and try to look for a problem to solve. When come tournament time, you just have to let that go and move on. Accept that it happened and move on. So I get them asking no more whys on the course. It's causing you to be stuck in the past and overthink. What now? Okay, well, what now? I need to figure out my target, my yardage. Like that gets them focused on the next shot.
Yeah, but what about the negative self-talk that golfers are excellent at doing? How do you get them to get through that? Because I found that's such a big piece of the puzzle with golfers. Because like you said, they hook the shot or they hit it in the water, they top it, whatever, and then the negative thinking goes in their head, and then they get stuck with that. That's why I always say take a practice swing, visualizing it properly. But too many, especially at the high school level, the pressure they put on themselves. Usually most high school golfers that I work with, male and female, are pretty good students. They're usually, most college golf teams typically have tennis, golf, and swimming typically have the highest GPAs, along with cross country, I found, at the collegiate level. All due respect to you as a volleyball player. But the overthinking, okay, what do you do about that to get them to work through that?
Yeah. Sometimes when an athlete is really negative, I think it's a lot to say, okay, let's work on being positive. It's like, I've been forming these habits for years and all of a sudden you're telling me to be positive. So I just like to say, let's focus on being productive. And I love the example of, if you're standing in the middle of a burning building and you're saying, this sucks, why did this happen? That's not getting you out of the burning building.
That's a problem.
Yeah. And then on the other side, let's be super positive and let's say, it's okay, everything's fine. Like, that's not getting you out of the burning building either. But what's my plan of action? What am I doing next? How am I getting out of here? That's productive. So I like to start there with them on the self-talk, is let's just be productive and getting you moving forward.
That's excellent. That's great. I love that. Now, let me shift gears with you for a second. Social media, which we're on right now, by the way, has become, it's part of our life now. And even 5-10 years ago, it wasn't anywhere. Obviously, 10 years ago, it wasn't even around like this. It's become such a big piece of the puzzle when I'm working with people. So the pro athletes I work with, I encourage all of them, stay off social media during the season. If you have an account, let somebody monitor it for you. Don't look at it. Don't focus on it. One of the Chiefs players that I work with, he told me after the Super Bowl, which, by the way, the Chiefs did win, second year in a row. I like to bring that in. But he did tell me afterwards one of the best things they ever told him was to get off social media during the season. He has somebody monitor stuff for him. He doesn't look at it. He doesn't post anything. He said because what it's done for him, it's allowed him to just focus on his performance. So let me get your opinion on social media now and the role it plays while I squirt my dog here from parking. Okay. He's been very active tonight. Normally he's pretty quiet.
Well, one of the first things I tell my athletes is to get off TikTok, because what's happening is all the mindless scrolling, the 6-second videos. You see a 6-second video, okay, go. Your mind is constantly stimulated. Athletes, especially younger ones, they don't know how to just sit there and be bored with their own thoughts. And so then when they're left in competition in the middle of a point or in the middle of a set and they have nothing to do but sit with their own thoughts, they don't know how to control those. And their attention is so bad, their focus is so bad because it's constantly stimulated. If they're bored for a millisecond, they're moving on to the next one. So I was like, get off TikTok. And especially with my tennis players and golfers, I see them looking up their opponent's scores, UTRs, stats, numbers, rankings, and it's just making them so much more nervous going into it. Like, do not look at your opponent's stuff. If it's not helping you feel more confident, then let's just nix it. And
so I love that, and I agree with you 100%. But the pressure on them to do that, in contrast to not doing it, is there because well, didn't you see that? Why didn't you know? So that's where I think the social pressures from peers and everybody else comes in. I have a basketball player I work with, and the seasons are going to get going here, this month, practices and things, and he shared with me the arch rival school that they play. He's told me how everybody gets on him, and he missed a key shot that would have won a game as a sophomore. He's going his senior year, and he goes, when the season gets started last year, that's all he got. All these messages about how he choked, how he can't perform under pressure, and they sent videos. So his parents came in with him to talk about that with me, and I said, you know what? My suggestion is, and I know this can be hard, don't get on social media while you're playing. And he had a great season last year because he said, yeah, I wasn't worried about what anybody said about me anymore. Just that I'm seeing the pressures on kids today with that is so enormous. So when you've got something like that, what do you say to them to get them through that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and typically they're fine with getting off of social media if they see the benefits and they know how it can help them. But then, like what you said, a lot of their teammates, their friends will be bringing stuff up, showing them videos. I'm like, okay, well, you can't control what your friends and teammates are doing. So yes, you can stay off of it, but there's also another part of it where we just need to work on what's in your control. No, you can't control what your teammates are showing you and doing. So, okay, let's be rational here and know that people only post really good things, usually only post good highlights. They aren't posting their mistakes by any means.
But everybody else will.
Oh yeah, but everybody else will post the moment, the kick that you choked on, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, before we wrap things up, I want to ask you this one. This is one I like to ask a lot of people. What's your thought about the ride home after a game when they get in the car? Oh, I know I get you on. Yeah, I like that. I like your smile on that one. Okay.
Yeah, because I literally a baseball team just hired me to work with their parents. It's a 12U team, and so last week I went in and we just had a 30-minute talk solely about the car ride home and about how important those conversations are. And my thing is, okay, if your kid needs a little cool down period because they're losing all composure, then just let them have it. But also, don't be bringing up all of their mistakes, this, that. I think the best thing that you can ask your kid after the game, car ride home, is where do you want to go eat? Like, your job as a parent is to be the supportive, awesome, loving parent and help them transition out of that athlete role. If they want to talk about the game, great. But either way, your reaction should be very consistent, very similar. Your kids should know what they're getting from you when they walk up to you.
Okay, so I'm going to throw this out at you, Georgia, see what you say. So my whole thing is, parents, after a game, you get in the car, don't bring up the game. If they want to talk about it, if the child wants to talk about it, fine. But basically, don't get into it too much. Say, let's wait till we get home. Let's go get something to eat, some ice cream, pizza, whatever. When we get home, let's calm down and talk about it. So I have a young man, and this is the first time it's ever come up. This young man,
44 years, really?
yes, honest, this is the first time it's ever come up. His dad just gets on him after soccer games and basketball games. So he played a basketball game, and his dad has been told you can't talk about it in the car. So they're in the car driving home. He says, I'm not going to talk about it, but I want you to watch the video of you playing, which I took. So I thought that was great. Well, I've never had that one before. So and then they got home. The dad said, see, I didn't talk about it, but I want you to watch the video. So the son said, you did talk about it because you asked me to watch the video. Mm-hmm. And then the mom was laughing while this is good. It was sort of funny the way they presented it. But the young man, I don't want to watch the video. I don't want to listen to you. I want to go home. Mm-hmm. So the dad now has promised he won't show him videos or anything unless he asks for it. But that's the first time the dad acknowledged, I'm not going to talk about it, but watch the video.
That's funny. He's going to find any loophole he can to get the kid to reflect on his mistakes, his performance. Yeah, that's funny. Honestly, I think showing them highlights, like, hey, you want to see your good plays? Like, ask them that. But yeah, other than that, like, I know some parents have like a 24-hour rule. Let's not talk about it till 24 hours later.
Yeah, I basically say, wait till you get home, relax a little bit, then say, do you want to talk about it now? And if they don't, you leave it alone. The worst thing to do is to push it on that, because that's where they'll turn them against you, is what I found with too many kids. Listen, I love what you're doing. You are obviously going to have a great career ahead of this, because, like I said, I've been doing it a long time, and I love talking to younger people who are getting started in this and doing it. And you've obviously learned from your career as a volleyball player about ups and downs, success and failure, stressors, all those types of things. What would be the big message you'd like to give parents who will be watching this, and maybe athletes who watch this, about what's the best way for them to feel the best they can about themselves when they're playing sports?
Mm-hmm. Parents, I would say you could coach thousands of kids if you want, but you can only parent a few, however many kids you have. So be the parent to the few that you can parent. That's your role there. And athletes, I'd say it's really about the small things. Start with how you're talking to yourself. Start with your body language. Start with getting extra reps. If you want to be a more confident person, then act like a confident person until you become that confident person. But it's building confidence in the small ways for me. Extra reps, body language, talking to yourself, eliminating all those comparisons, celebrating other successes. I'm big on the small things to build confidence.
Well, Georgia, listen, I love what you're saying. You've got a great career ahead of you with this, because you really get it. And I appreciate you coming on tonight. If people want to reach you, get a hold of you, how can they get in contact with you?
Yes, our website is www.peaksports.com. My email is georgia.miller@peaksports.com. So feel free to email me or at.
And you're down in Miami, Florida. So anybody in South Florida can get a hold of you then.
Oh, yeah, easily.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
You've been
thank
great.
you, Dr. Jacobs.
And I want to, let everybody know, our shows are on everywhere. You can go to all the podcast apps and see it. Check me out Sunday mornings on 810whb.com. That's my radio show from 7 to 8 Central Time. Have a great week. Check out my website, winnersunlimited.com, and take care.